Hi, everyone. I'm Gabriella Ruda, host of the Style POV podcast, and I am so incredibly honored and thrilled to welcome today's guest. It is the man, the legend. We all just worship his new work.
Oh, God, I'm blushing.
Let's welcome David Kibbe.
Oh, so much. I'm bright red if you can't see it. That's so lovely. Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here.
I have just poured through your book. You don't understand. I read the first one. I followed your work. I read the second one. You know, if you can't see this, the notes I have in this book are incredible. I'm
very proud of you.
I mean, every page I was like annotating things. I was
I'm
like,
so
what about
happy
this?
to hear that
What
because
about
that's
that?
really the way it needs to be done. So, you know I'm seeing people racing through it because they want to get to certain things, and I understand that. My wish would be that you don't do that, but you're going to do it. So my suggestion is do that. And then go back and take your time, because it really is about that. It's a book of process.
It is, and it's so important. I think the way you start off is just like defining style and talking about kind of your mindset with it.
It's so important, yeah.
So let's start there. How do you define style?
Okay. All right. Style is our visual language of presenting ourselves to the world.
Yeah.
It's how we tell our story to the world. And ultimately, it's sort of how you claim your purpose. Because I really believe we all come here, as I've said a million times, we come to this planet with a purpose. And we're all individuals. Like every single person on this planet is a unique individual. And every single person has a story to tell. So how do we get our stories out there? Because we all came at the same time. So we must need each other's stories, right?
Of course.
So it's a terrible thing if someone's story doesn't get out there. So style is how you do that. It's how you focus it. It's how you get your message across. Most importantly, I think it's how you communicate with others. Because it is a reciprocal thing. I think too many people think, oh, this is my style. I wear what I want, and that's just it. But that isn't style. That, to me, that's narcissism, and that's okay because that's part of it. But it's really the energy that we put out so that we get it back and that we continue to create together, because we're all here together. And I think that this is why I call this whole thing love-based beauty. It has to come from inside you. It has to come from the core of who you are. And then it's like a discovery process of all the different things that this incarnation of you as a human being have at your fingertips. Because we all have a lot of the same things, but we're all unique in how we put them together. So you discover these things along the way of your life. And that's why it's so important that your style, like you, evolves, because we're always evolving, until the day it's time to leave this planet. But style is how you get that out to the world. That's what I feel.
I love that. I love the part that you're talking about of interacting on the sidewalk as well. And I kind of imagined it as like, I want to take up my space. I don't want my style to punch other people in the face. But I want it to be something I can own, that I feel like I've come to this planet, this is my little world, this is what I've carved out, and this is what I'm telling the world. But I'm also walking down the street and interacting with people.
You're sharing it.
We're sharing, yes, and they're sharing back.
That's exactly right. And it's like, everything is really energy. So if you boil it down to that in an abstract way, before we get into closing all of that, which is how we focus it, we're really talking about energy going back and forth, and that's what makes the universe revolve. That idea of sharing the sidewalk was, to me, so important, because some people today do think that I'm just going to take up my space and the hell with the rest of you. But I like to say, if you're walking down the street, the sidewalk is community property.
Yeah.
And we interact with each other. If you really do believe that it's about sharing your story, well, you're the star of your story, but your story has all these other people in it too. Yeah. You've got to have people to tell your story to, and you have a reason to tell it to them because you want them to hear it, because you want something from them, as we all do.
Yeah.
Respect, love, attention, a purpose. This is the difference between like people who think they're singers because they sing in the shower. That's great, and that's fun, and that's wonderful, but that's not really an interactive kind of a thing. We live in life. We don't live in an isolation. So style is really how we get to connect with each other. It's the first thing. You see someone first before they speak, before anything else.
Of course.
That's your focus. It's like in any movie, a great movie, the costumes will focus the character and you know exactly where you are, you know when you're there, and it sets the tone.
Tells you everything you need to know. In 5 seconds, you understand, is the character going to have their moment soon? Have they just like been broken up with? Have they found themselves?
It sets the tone before you even know what you're talking about.
Well, I just absolutely love that. And I think it was so interesting when you were going through the book, because I know people, they were so excited about it. They got so much information from the line sketch, but they're like, I went straight there. And I was like, I think you should need to go back to the first couple chapters.
It's so important. You cannot do that line sketch until you've done the other things, because the problem with doing the line sketch is, again, you're going instantly to a result. The cover of the book tells you everything this book is going to be, because it says at the top, a new vision of beauty. Yes. That means it's a new paradigm. That means we've got to switch.
Yes.
Okay? There was the old and there is the new. And times have changed and clothes have changed and we've all changed and it's a new world. Okay? So you need a new vision. And also it's a different vision from what everybody's been told always.
Yes.
About their appearance, whether you call it style or whatever. Then it's David Kibbe's power of style. The power that can be unleashed when you really do learn what style really is and you get into this new vision. And then underneath, it's a guided journey to your authentic style. So a journey is the point, you know. And I always say, like, see, a lot of times if you're trying to go to Los Angeles from New York, you can't just be there.
I know.
You got to get there.
Yes.
And I think of this more like a road trip, because if you take a road trip, yeah, you want to get to the destination. Of course you do, but it is all those places along the way that make the trip.
And they're beautiful. And you learn something about yourself.
Because style is self-discovery. It has to be. And so you've got to discover all these things that you have the potential for, but also the pit, because what you've been taught to do and the things you bring to the table. We have so many prejudices. It's really important that people, in the way they're viewing the book, don't bring an expectation to it. It's something brand new. It's not the old book. It's not the old times. It's not about that. As little babies, we come to this life with an open heart. We are just like in love. We don't come wanting to be somebody else or something else, and then we learn all these things. And there is that core of, you know who you are, and if we can get back to that, because everyone has that love center. It's your soul. That's the whole point.
Well, it's that unblocking process. Things that have been conditioned or have been told to you or stuck in your brain, an offhanded comment, a preconceived notion.
That's right.
It's like getting in touch with those and trying to slowly shed those skins.
Yeah, and the first thing is you have to be aware that you have them. Admit that you have them. Yeah. That's why I like that part. Don't try for objectivity. That's what people do online all the time. They think, you know, well, I'm going to be objective, or I can be more objective about you. Nobody's objective about anything. We can't be. We're not wired that way, because we're wired to experience things. That's authentic to you. I always say we're visceral creatures. We experience through our senses. Like if you walk down past a bakery, you smell that bread, you know, and it's amazing. Or like we live close to one of those metroplexes, and the popcorn scent is for blocks, and it's horrible popcorn, but it makes you want to go right in and get it. That is our own experience, and nobody can take that away from you, and it's nobody else's. I don't know how you react to chocolate, but you say that word to Susan and she goes crazy. We all have a reaction that is ours, that is visceral. That's why the games evolve, because they allow you to not be colored by your preconceived ideas, but they get in touch with your authentic experience. And in time, if you build on that, that's where your identity really is formed. That really is it. Because instead of forming our sense of ourself by other people's expectations of us, or what we've been told we must be, whether it's from other people or society, we want to build our identity on what is intrinsically us, because we know who we are and we know why we're here. If people would have left us alone, we would know. But that's the whole point, to build on that. Each step of the book allows you to discover, rediscover, newly discover. It's self-discovery. That's the whole point.
I love the idea that you're unblocking those things, walking into your authenticity, but it's a slow journey.
Yeah, well,
It's
life is a slow journey, isn't it?
course,
Unless you're
yeah.
James Dean. But it's a delicious journey. If we take the time, it's a cliche, but take the time to smell the roses.
Yeah.
You know, if you really do that, I mean, that is a literal, if you literally stop and smell a rose, wow, that's an experience that who would want to miss out on that? And yet we all do all the time.
I know. We want the answers.
Yeah,
It's
well,
one
yeah.
of our faults right now in society. I think we rush things.
Because you know why? Because they want to categorize us because they can sell more things. When we talk about style, and we're really talking in our language, we're talking about appearance, and a lot of it's clothes. There's always a company which has now a conglomerate and now has a billionaire behind it.
Of course.
So the more they can put us into categories, the easier it is to sell more things.
Yeah.
That's why trends make so much money, because trends in teenagers, it hits you right at the spot in your development where that is exactly your sweet spot. And it goes like this. It's so fast today, especially, but that's how they make a lot of money. They don't want you to be individuals. That's really hard for them to market to.
I know, because they know how many dresses
And
to
that-
order,
that's
and they
ex-
know they're going to
And
sell.
I mean, it's a heavy lift, and I'm not battling to change the system because, but I'm trying to give people tools to work with whatever we have, you know. Working within the landscape that we have is important. That's why the book is new. That's why the system has evolved over the years.
It's a new paradigm.
It is. It absolutely is. And it's been happening for a while. Before I even knew I was on the internet, okay? I had no idea because I work in real life with people. I live in real life, and also I'm from another time when that's all we did. And an old client of mine came to me one day and she said, you know, I'm in this community group online and there's several thousand people in it, and we're very interested in you. There's a whole area of our group that's devoted to you, and they'd like to hear from you. So, and then I went and looked at it, and it was like they had a library of my stuff. They excerpted things, and then it moved me over to Facebook, and there were 23 pages of Facebook with my name on them that I didn't even know existed. So all this stuff sort of started without me. And, you know, the problem is it was excerpts from the old book. So the old book, it was of its time, which is a very different time, and clothes are very different. The 80s was the last time they were really like that.
Yeah.
So it was written for that time and for those clothes and for the way we lived then.
As it should have been.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
For the people in the
That's
80s,
right.
they needed to hear their landscape.
That's it. Yeah, right. I'm not here to talk about, you know, to teach people.
You don't time travel,
That's
right?
Oh, that would be a nice thing. Maybe in our dreams we do.
I like that idea.
Even then, it is always a journey. I've always believed that this idea that beauty and style exist outside of ourselves. There's like this ideal that we're supposed to be, and that all the rules are like how you pick yourself more into that. I've always felt that's just an awful thing, because it's really saying that you're wrong, you're not right.
You're not enough.
They're not enough, yeah. So even if you do those things, you're just putting a facade over yourself. So underneath it, you never really get that feeling of confidence. A lot of people don't even know that it exists because it's been so prevalent and so strongly thrust upon us. All these different things that have evolved, like the idea you've got to be symmetrical, or the fruits or body types or anything like that, that puts an ideal that starts with a result that's outside of you. Even if you work with what you think you're doing with my work, if you're going for the result, you're doing that same thing because you're starting with this and you're trying to fit yourself into that.
Yeah.
It's the reverse. See, I really felt from the beginning, I want to create a system that people can actually use, because it's a lot of stuff to do to put yourself together, that starts with the individual, that then you work out of that and you create your image, the way you present yourself, out of you.
Yes.
And that's why it's called image identity. And I think people forget that.
Yes.
It's not a type. It's never been that. It's not a body type. It's not a type of any type. It's not an essence type. It's image identity, because we're talking about your identity. What is the image of your identity? That's why sometimes, like in groups, people think, well, I'm going to try on different, they call it IDs. I'm going to try on different ones. And I'm like, You can't try on different identities.
I
it's
started
you.
there. I know. I'm sorry.
No. Look, experimentation is great. No, I think that's wonderful. Of course, you learn by that. But I think the words are really important because then if you do that and you realize you're doing that to really learn about who you are, not what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
That's great. But if you're doing it to learn about what you're supposed to do so you can become that, that's the opposite of how this
or for others' validation.
And that is always...
And that's the tricky parts of this landscape is that
it becomes
like an echo chamber where you're like, is this? And there's like 15 different people saying so confidently something
exactly,
that you're like,
right?
Maybe I'm all wrong.
No, that's exactly right. And social media, because also the goal is to get all these likes so that you get fame and you get money. It's just crazy. It goes round and round and round, and people spin their wheels. That's what they do. So that's why you got to get back to the very beginning. That's the whole point. Start at the beginning. You can read this book again and again and again and again.
I already have.
And when I wrote it, it was very important for me not to have any filler. Like everything that was going to be in this book needs to be there. And if it's not in the book, it's not there for a reason. It's not that I forgot to put something in it. Yeah. It's that there's a different way of doing it. And I'm trying to reroute you.
Yeah.
So the whole idea, you go to the beginning. I talk a lot about in the beginning about my piano background. That was very important to me. And I had the most amazing teacher. She was one of the greatest ones on the planet, truly. And, I was talented. That was there too, but it was the technique. But I would play in these competitions, and I was very successful, and they would go on for several months. And by the end, I would get to there, and I would win. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, she would have me go right back to where we started with the piece, which was broken down note by note, with the metronome. Yeah. And it would go like as if we had never done it before. Because she said, there's no perfection. We're not going for that. You're going for excellence, and you want to be the best that you can be, but there's no place that you're getting to.
Of course.
And again, it's marketing, though. If you're like a company, and even if you're a designer today, you're beholden to the company. And that's very hard because marketing and style are two different things.
They are.
But that's okay, because if you understand these things, this is why identity is so important. Then you have at your fingertips all this fabulous stuff. Mm-hmm. I was watching your Project Runway, which you should have won. You were fabulous if I had been on that show. But your creativity is amazing. And, there is amazing stuff out there that people have no idea that they can wear because they're going by those old recommendations, which were created for clothes that were made completely differently.
Yes.
Completely differently from today. I mean, I think a lot of people think, modern fashion is just trend. And then they go back to all the different trends and think, it changes by trend to trend. The trends don't have anything to do with modern fashion.
No.
Trends are a marketing thing. Trends come and go, but also they come back.
They do.
They're recycled. Like when you live long enough, what you're doing, they did it before. Yeah. Like my mother always used to say, don't throw anything away because it's coming back. And I'll go, oh yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Or she would say, yes. And she would say, we used to wear that. And I'd be going,
But not like how we wear that.
Exactly. It's like when you're younger, that's what you should do. That's where you are in your development as a human being. That's exactly right. Because this work is all about individuality, it's for everyone. It is for everyone to use, once you get the technique, however it's right for you to use it. There's a huge range of people, not just socioeconomic, but ages. They start really, really young. Yeah. They go really, really old, like even in the reveals in the book. And I wanted to make sure we did this because we have this whole range.
Yes.
There is a girl who was 16 at that time, and there's a woman who's 80.
Yes.
And it needs to be that. And we have everything in between 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, because this is the whole world.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did really try to do differently consciously was to be as inclusive as we really could.
I noticed that.
And one of the most fun things in the book to me was when we got into the icons and exemplars.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
I mean, you see, I tried to do as much as that as I could in the old days, but we didn't have the resources that we have today. I can't use examples that people don't know. And it's very limiting because if you live in another culture like Bollywood has been certainly as viable and filled with examples as Hollywood, but nobody that was going to read that old book would know anyone about
them, yeah.
that, so it doesn't do any good.
That
Whereas
access
everybody
is
knows
important.
Katharine Hepburn, and everybody
Yes.
knows Marilyn Monroe, and so that helps.
I want to ask you a little two things about the
okay,
exemplars. So to explain what their role is, and I think you put it as they show a spectrum of what the image identity can be and individual successful interpretations of that image identity as a style. They're not necessarily something to go, I need to copy this person.
Absolutely not. In fact, one of the reasons that I like to use those people that are from a whole other time in Hollywood, you can't do that. So that's on purpose. That's because the last thing I want to do is do celebrities today that don't have anything, they're dressed by celebrity stylists, they have designer endorsements, they're on social media, so they're trying to get likes, which is, there's a lot of shock value in that. The red carpets today are like all about the dresses, they're not about the person.
Yes.
And so the old ones, they had the studio behind them, they had a vested interest to shape that person, because that's what drove people to the movies. I mean, it's purely commercial once again. So it's just that the techniques that they used, because they had all the greatest artists in the world taking the new actress and thinking, what is it in her that's unique and special that we can put out and hopefully create that indelible image.
Yes.
And because they had the body of work and the power of the studio, they created these movies, the biggest movies like Gone with the Wind or Casablanca or something like that.
Of course.
Everybody can, if you don't know them, you can find them.
Yes.
So
you should know them.
Yeah, so it's that combination that makes it possible. So the icons, they really are from old Hollywood because they have that technique behind them. We're not trying to copy them or try to say that's your style. I'm trying to have you see in them how the techniques were used to take who that person was and form the image out of that. Image identity.
Yeah.
They had that behind them. And
they had help doing that.
That's
and
what
that's
I mean.
what this book helps us do.
Well, I hope so. That's very nice. That is what I want to do. But they had the greatest artists in the world and the greatest designers, the greatest hair people, the greatest makeup people, all working together to do that.
And fine-tuning those things for them so that their communication with the world was, this is your unique gift. This is how we're going to share it.
That's exactly right, through all the elements that we still do. So that we don't have that today and never will again. So that's why I use those as icons. Okay, the exemplars. Okay, I really wanted to speak to the whole idea that we have this whole world today and that we're in a more inclusive time, and thank God we are. It isn't like that nobody else ever had style or has style. It's that how do I go to as many different cultures that have something there, and it's film, that is strong enough so that through time, they're mainly actresses, has also had this kind of focus. So there's a body of work, and she is very distinct, and also there is enough artistry in what's been done so that it's clear enough. So she occupies a similar type of place in that pantheon. And I'm also trying to make examples that are clear enough so people can get it, wherever you're coming from. Because this is for all ages, it's for all backgrounds, all ethnicities, all everywhere. So I want to give people a form of representation that isn't imitation, but that gives them something to take
hook onto a little
That's
bit
exactly
and
right.
kind of pull the thread a little bit.
And these are amazing women. I mean, they have amazing stories, these exemplars. And I hope I introduce people that didn't know any of them before to some of them, because, wow, their stories are just as important as anybody else's. And, because they didn't have the Hollywood machine behind them in some ways, they have a more dramatic story. They're women, they're pioneers, they really are.
So what was the choice for the icons then? Because I noticed some of them changed a little.
I wanted to make them just a few
natural,
of them.
I think.
Mitzi Gaynor. Okay, because who did I have before? I
think you had Shirley MacLaine.
Okay, Shirley MacLaine. Well, because one of the reasons I wanted to do too.
Well, it's a new paradigm. So.
It's a new paradigm. But also, you see, I am looking at what people have done with this over the years, how people react, positive and negative, and a lot of flamboyant naturals. And I'll tell you, there's so much negativity online, this leads to that. They're led into this thing that isn't glamorous or isn't sexy or isn't, and I thought, well, that isn't right.
Everyone gets glamour.
That's exactly right. So I wanted to make it equal in terms of that. And, Shirley MacLaine is fabulous, but, she's like kind of all over the place. But then, Mitzi Gaynor is like, oh man, she's as glamorous as anyone ever was.
She's nonchalant.
She's nonchalant showstopper. Yeah. And I just thought, and also it's a little more fresh. Also, because Shirley MacLaine has been in our lives so long, and now she's older, and our ideas of Shirley MacLaine are a little more fuzzy than if we go. Anytime you go back to an icon from the golden age, they're gone. You don't have to deal with them, at a different stage of their life or anything like that. You're dealing with the image. It's really more about the image that was created.
It's a concept almost more than the person. Because,
you said it beautifully. That's exactly
when they get to
right.
a certain age, we don't see all those those personal evolutions that you talk about, how age and change. We're not privy to that. We don't know what they would have done in 2 decades and who they would have evolved into.
That's right. And this is also, when we're talking about an iconic kind of thing, it's exactly what you said. You said it perfectly, and I'm going to borrow it if you don't mind.
Oh, cool.
It's a concept. The worst thing is when people look at pictures or the icons or in the book, the reveals or the illustrations and say, well, I would wear that. Oh, I wouldn't wear that. Oh, that's awful. I would never, ever wear that. Nobody wears that today. If you read what I say before, I'm very careful to say how you look at these. Do not try to relate this to yourself. That's not the point of this. The point of this is I tell a story about the person.
Yes.
The reveals, I really tell who the person is. I give enough physical information so you can get a bit of a physicality. You don't need that much, but talking about her. So like a reveal, the before and after picture, the after is where that person, that individual is in her life at this moment. And everybody is a different place. So it's like her transformation. She's not a stand-in for all, dramatic classics.
Yeah. But it's also them taking ownership of that style. That style was for them.
Yeah,
it's not
that's the
actually
point.
For whether I'm the
That's
same
right.
image identity as that
That's
person
right.
or not.
See,
I'm not trying to co-opt that outfit.
That's exactly
that was
right.
specifically for her journey.
Yeah, that's
and her
exactly right.
expression.
And that's how you learn things. See, this is like when people skip to the other things, like the line, is this me? Is this me? Is this me? If you haven't learned how to unfold that, if you haven't gotten to that through a process of step-by-step self-discovery, then it can never be right for you because it has to be built on who you are. So your interpretation of any of this has to be who you are, which comes step by step, not from trying to imitate someone else. But that is the way we learn to do things, Or in the illustrations, you see, okay, here's the big thing. Like a big thing in this book is that there's no list of recommendations because that's not because I forgot to put them in them or didn't want to. That's because that is based on a time when fashion was rigid. It has to do with the silhouette. But there was a rigidity. Like if I could have a split screen of 2 videos, one was stopping in the 80s, because that's when this other thing stopped, and one is today, you would see the two, like if I had suits and dresses and all, you would see, and some real people wearing them, you would see how different clothes are today.
The tailoring.
That's exactly it.
The elements,
That's
the
right.
fit. I mean,
That's
it
right.
also has impacted fast fashion because you cannot tailor like that and put it
You
out
can't.
for $12.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
it doesn't exist.
But also underneath it all too, what people don't understand, that you get involved in trend. Fit is right. And what determines all of that? Fabric. And what you do with fabric, like if you're trying to tailor charmeuse and you're trying to tailor wool, that's completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Everything today, okay, it's the difference between rigidity and flexibility. Everything today is based on flexibility. Everything before was based on rigidity.
Yes.
So recommendations are great for rigidity because there's something fixed that we have to fit you into as best we can. So the recommendations are how we do that. Today you can't give somebody recommendations because there's like, if I go to a rack, there's like 10 things on that rack that you could wear that you never could have worn before. That if I have a list of recommendations, it wouldn't be on that. And on the other hand, there's a jacket that I could put on 5 different people. So when people use the old way of doing it, it's like, well, you're stuck in the 80s. Because that was the last era. When I give those illustrations of the silhouettes through time, I call it from togas to flappers.
Yeah.
There's Greek, there's Edwardian, there's 20s, 40s, 50s, and 80s. And it stops in the 80s for a reason. Because that's when fabric really slowly started to change. And we get in the 90s, and it's kind of like, there's not a real clear sense of it. We get to 2000, it's like things are completely different.
Yes.
And there is never, someone asked me something, well, what do you think is going to be taken from each decade now in the future? And I said, nothing really, because with flexibility, you can't see that one thing. See, silhouette is everything. That's the technical key to this. It's everything. And if you could get away from details, because details are subordinate to the design of the outfit. The design of the dress determines the neckline. There's no such thing as a neckline that works for people or doesn't work for people. Because if it's in the right dress, the neckline is going to be according to what the dress requires. So you got to stop thinking of those things. You have to reorient yourself, because I think the best way to think of it, when someone walks in the room, what do you see? You see color and you see the outline. Yes. Those are the first two things. And then you have a lot of other things that you process. But that's where we start. And we're always working for harmony. So I always like to say you're a painting and a sculpture.
I love
so
those.
How do we capture the beauty of your painting, which is a masterpiece, and how do we drape this glorious sculpture that you are so that it's in harmony with what's there? But today, because the fabric is flexible, it drapes around the body. Clothes hang off the shoulders and they drape around the curves.
Yes.
So this is why you have to understand.
Much less seaming, much less construction involved.
And even when it's there, it's going to be different because the fabric is different. It holds it in a different way. And that is the landscape that we live in. And you can pretend that you're not living in that if you want to. I think that's why also clothes don't fit today, going back to that.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, they go by the old rules, but they're wearing new clothes. So clothes are too tight and too short, or else they're too oversized. It's either flaunt the body or hide the body, but you've lost the beauty of the potential of what it's meant to be. So, people are living in another time without knowing it.
I think that so there's a little bit of a knowledge gap, especially for people
Huge.
in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
And when they found your book and when you've kind of had this renaissance right now, people were just like, I never even thought to look at the fabric. I never even thought to look at these shapes. So again, they are working from an old
I agree.
system.
Yeah, and it's a heavy lift and it's a gradual change.
And I think it's just they're looking at their bodies differently. They're looking at how clothes interacting, and they are basing it on love, because they're not saying, oh, well, because I'm not Kate Moss, I'm somehow defective because I can't pull this off.
Well, I hope so.
No, I think that's the impact you had. So when this new book came out, it was just a little shocking that they're like, oh my God, like you're taking the training wheels off. Yeah, I have to make these choices now. I have to figure that out.
So we have to, but it's not so hard. You see, it's really simple. You work in harmony with what's there. It's the key. The technique is very clear. Where I have the illustrations, and this is all it needs. How does the eye travel? Yes. Like with the dramatic, which comes from the extreme yin-yang balance, the sharp yang, and the line is narrow and vertical. Vertical first, narrow. All right. So when you have the clothes on the body, because today a silhouette is a combination of the body and the clothes. Yes. It used to be silhouette was standalone, you fit yourself into it. All right, how does your eye travel? It has to travel up and down, that's the vertical, and it has to be relatively narrow. So you aren't going to wear flouncy things, you aren't going to wear big ruffly things that go out, but you can wear soft. If something is sleek, it's cut on the bias, like that's the 30s.
That evening gown
Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, that's gorgeous, yeah. So it goes like that, but it's still, the eye has to travel like that. That's the one thing you need. And that replaces all those recommendations. The recommendations are passé, completely passé. But silhouette is always the key. And that's what you need to know today, because that gives you the freedom to have all these things that are out there that are wonderful for you that you don't even know are there. But like with the soft natural, okay, it's curve and width. So you have to see softness, shaping, but the width is the breadth on top, which doesn't mean you wear great big shoulder pads. It just means that you have room up here. So it can be a portrait neckline, it could be a slightly dropped sleeve, it could be just a little extra fabric, but it's going to have room there. The eye's going to go like this and this.
Yes.
So that is how the silhouette, that's where it goes. Where does the eye travel? And if I could get people to stop posting, well, like online, people post like, does this shirt work on me? And then it doesn't, no, it doesn't have anything to do with that, because right now it's just a shirt on you. Put it in the whole outfit, because that's how we see you. Yes. You're not walking around, from
just a shirt.
That's right, because there's a lot of shirts that you can make work and a lot that are never going to make work. But it all depends on how it goes with everything else. So it really is how your eye travels. That's the key, the technical key. But you can't get to that until you've done a lot of those other things, like potluck is so important as the games.
Yes.
Because what are you bringing to the table? Like even today, I saw this woman online. She was working, and she says, I don't see any width when I look at my body. And then there's her sketch, and she's drawn the sketch pretty right, and it's very clearly wide there. But she's saying, well, my hips aren't wide, and I don't see, and she has some concept in her mind.
Yeah.
I'm saying, it's right there. You drew it right there. This right through here is wider, and then everything else, you see those dots. That's why I put them there, so you can see where the width is. But people still want to say, well, I don't know, I have width in my hips. There is no such thing. There is no upper curve or lower curve or all these things people come up with. There is the one outline, which is the concept of personal line is the key. And I created that as the technique to allow you to learn how to create a complementary silhouette. But it's not an outline of the body. It is how you get to, it's technical, how you get to a complementary silhouette. And there's lots of different things that will fit in that.
Of course.
But that's how you do it. You can't just do it on your body because you're not going to be able to see those things on your body.
Of course.
You get fixated on body parts.
Of course.
And it isn't that. It's the whole thing. The personal line sketch is a blueprint for a complementary silhouette.
So it kind of matches.
It
perfect.
teaches
So
you how to build
hand
it.
and hand on top of here, we match these two silhouettes.
Well,
to start.
It's like, okay, yeah, exactly. Once you have your personal line sketch, that is your complementary silhouette has to allow that personal line sketch.
Honor it.
Has to
Mimic
honor it. Yeah, but it's like you build a house. You have to have a blueprint before you does the structure. So that is the key. That is the foundation. It's not recommendations. It's not essence. It's not any of those things that were written for another time. It is technically how you get to a complementary silhouette. That is everything. And then from there, it becomes the other things we talk about, how you build a head to toe, how you pick an outfit, you choose it by situation and intention, and because you have freedom today. Everybody is still coming from the training, we'll call it that, that comes from another time, which was bad then because it was still saying that you got to reach this thing outside yourself. But in clothes, there was a rigidity. So the training is all based on that.
Yeah.
But today, everything is free, and you have freedom at your fingertips. But it's like you're going by rules that were when you're in prison. That's gone. You're out of jail.
But it's almost too much choice, I
I
think, for people.
know.
They're like, oh my
You're
gosh,
right.
what do I do?
You know, there was this old musical called Metropolis, I think. I don't think it ever came to New York, but it was based on this. Everybody lived underground because they were like, there were two parts of society and they were forced. And then one day they were released and some of them couldn't stand the light. So they go back down, you know. You don't want to be that.
No, of course not. But I think it's interesting, too, because I think in the book you mentioned this, or I heard you say it, correct me if I'm wrong, that now in today's landscape, we basically have garments that can work for multiple image identities.
That's right.
Now, because of that, does the head to toe and coloring, like cords that you speak of, play so much more of an integral role now?
Yeah. Well, they did before, too, but in a different way. But absolutely, in terms of the outfit, because otherwise you're just a hot mess. It's only because you haven't learned how you can really step into the power, discover the power of what your style is. When we talk about head to toe, all right, it's really important to embrace that concept because, again, it's not a rigid thing. We're not talking like the 50s where, you know, like my older sister, when there would be a dance or something, she'd get her dress and they'd buy these white pumps and they'd go take them to the shoemaker and dye them the color of the dress. And that bag would be dyed the color of the dress. A hairdresser told me once that worked for me. He used to work at the hair salon at the Plaza Hotel. The women, and this must have been in the late 50s and early 60s, older women come in and their hair is like white or whatever, and they would have a pastel colored rinse put on it to match their dress.
Oh, it's kind of fabulous.
I know, it kind of does. But also, it's not that. Head to toe isn't that.
Of course not.
It's that you want continuity, you want cohesiveness, so that there's a relationship between everything that you put on your body.
Yes.
It doesn't mean they have to match exactly, but sometimes they do, and sometimes that's fabulous. But there has to be a connection.
Of
so
course.
like a theme that connects things. A lot of times we'll use music. Like if you have a top that's doing a waltz and the bottom that's doing a rumba, it's like a blah, 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 you know?
Yeah.
You want everything to be in harmony so that there's focus in what you're putting out.
Or like if you're doing a scale, you don't want an off note.
That's
you don't
right.
want like
you can't sing in two different. That's
you know?
right. That's right. You have to. Everything has to be in the same key. You know.
Now this is reminding me of one of the exercises in the book, which I absolutely love, all about the movies. So I've been rewatching them. I'm on the journey and I'm doing it. And I was remembering in Funny Face the introduction about how Think Pink.
Oh God, it's so funny. We just watched that the other night again.
I know, and it's so wonderful. And if you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to. But I was struck by the fact that the editor editor, she's saying everyone needs to wear pink now. And then all of her like assistant editors all come out in their own version of a very similar outfit. They all have their own unique
different hats and everything.
Different skirts, slightly different tailoring. Yeah. And then, they say, but what about you? Aren't you going to wear pink? And she was like, I would never be caught. And it was kind of this funny little juxtaposition of like, I'm going to tell everyone what to do, but I'm not going to wear that. I know my style.
There's two messages in that. One is that the first thing that you said, that even when you have something rigid, there is a way to try to work within it. That's sort of the old way. And that we also were dictated to, whether it was from Paris or whatever. Also, there is another underlying thing today, if we could take that, which is the freedom. Because she's telling other people to do it, but she's not going to do it because it's not for her. And see, today, what's out there is freedom. It's freedom. So that's what this book is about. I don't want to control what people wear. I want to give them the freedom to have the choice. But you don't have choice if you don't have technique. It isn't just I wear whatever I want and I'll do a little of this and a little of this and a little of that. That's fine, and that is an element of it, and that is wonderful when you're 6 years old. It's so charming. And when you're 15, you want to do what all your friends are doing. And that, when you're in your early 20s, you're doing still a little of that, and you're stepping out a little bit. Then when you get a little older, your life changes, and you have different ideas about what your life is about. So it starts
sense of self, I think, as you age.
Let me tell you something about that that's interesting. Okay, so when I started doing this years ago, I noticed right away that the women coming in, because they've come in all different ages, but when they came in around the age of 25, something like that, mid-20s usually, late 20s for sure, they started to take it more seriously. Younger women coming in, I knew they thought it was fun. It was a fun thing to do. It was a trendy thing to do. It was an in thing to do. I knew they weren't going to do most of it. I knew they'd do some of it, or maybe some of them would not do it at all because they're going about their business. Okay, so then later on, I learned that the brain develops in a certain way, and that when they call that what they call the teenage brain is from teenage years to around the age of 25, and that is when the frontal lobe is fully developed.
Yes.
And when that happens, that is when we start to make choices in a different way. And I thought, well, that is exactly my experience. No wonder. And then I start thinking, see, style, it is an extension of you as a human being. So it is going to evolve as you evolve. And we go through natural rites of passage. Like little children are first dressed by their parents. And in my case, my mother was in the WACS during World War II. She was a lieutenant colonel in the WACS.
Wow.
But she was Roosevelt's military aide. But she also trained recruits. She was a drill sergeant. And that's how she raised us. So we were to do what she said, and we were photo ops. So that's what we were until we were the age that we could start to like, now I'm going to wear this, which is around 6 or something. And then you get to 15, and it's like you don't want to be anything at all like your parents, but you do want to be like your peers. And that's why trend is so important, and because that's what trends are for. Trends mean everybody's doing it. That's the opposite of style, which is personal to you. Irregardless, maybe you do something that other people are doing, or maybe you don't, but it becomes about you. Then when you get to like your mid-20s, your life changes. And as you go through life, we all have these rites of passage at different time. And your style reflects that. Naturally it does. Naturally it would. And now we
dance with these moments in time.
That's right.
And we're trying to figure out, are we leading? Are we following?
There you go. That's you're brilliant. You really are.
No, but I mean, I relate to that journey so much because as a child, like, I loved glamour, and
you still do.
I know. But like, I loved the Hardy Girls, and I wanted the corsets, and like, I wanted high heels, and my mom wouldn't get them to me, so I was like, I'm cutting salad top dressings, and I'm going to glue them on my shoes.
Did you really do that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was committed. But
I love that. Oh, that's so charming.
We develop this, and then at a certain point, we do kind of put our own kind of armor on, and I think this process is kind of removing that and getting in touch with like a very vulnerable side to ourselves.
It is very vulnerable, and sometimes people are very frightened too.
It
and
is.
I understand that.
Of course.
But it's love-based beauty. This whole technique is based on self-acceptance, and that's what's wrong with the internet too, because it's everybody telling you what to do. It's just more people telling you what to do.
Oh my goodness!
And then they get mad, because
sometimes you got to turn it off and just be like, okay,
it's
thank you.
True. Yeah, because you need to sometimes you just need to go breathe.
Yeah. And it takes a while to digest all of this and
Oh,
understand
God, yeah.
the purpose of it and where you're going to fall. You know, I think that's why it's just like, it is a journey. It's like you can't skip the steps, because if you go straight to the line, if you go straight to the examples, you're just going to be like, I wouldn't wear that, so that's not me. And you're like, that's not the point.
It's not the point at all, you know. The point is to give you a choice, not just what you are attracted to, but what really works to tell your message. There's not a human being on earth that does not want to be seen, does not want to have their voice heard, and does not want to be respected.
And understood.
Yeah, and understood. However, sometimes some of us are so damaged for lots of ways that we want to hide.
Yeah.
And, you know, that I respect that, and I honor that as part of the journey, too. And, you know, that's why also the beauty of do-it-yourself is you go at your own pace. You know, you don't have to go further than you feel you can, and you can come back to it. And if you're not ready to do it, that's okay, too. I say, you know, how you should approach this book, and which is my work, come with an open mind and an open heart, and you really be willing to change. You have to be willing to change. Now, you don't have to change. That's up to you, but you have to be willing to. And if you're not willing, and maybe you're not, then wait, do it later, because it won't do you any good. You know, if you come to it like, well, I already know this, I know I need to waste, or I know I don't need to know any of these things, I just want to know what looks good on me, you're not going to get it, because there is no what looks good on you, because that's like 5 different people will give you 5 different answers. And what you think looks good on you at any given time maybe because, you know, you always felt like you were heavy and you want something that makes you look thin. So now you're not heavy, and you weren't heavy before, but, you know, you had this, maybe your mother put that in your head, so you're dressing to do that unconsciously.
I know.
That's why it's so important to bring those things up and out.
Absolutely. I was like going through it, and I was realizing how much, like in my own personal style journey, I was like, oh, I have so much conditioning and so many preconceived notions that I'm having to work through. And I was like, my commitment as I go on this like process is basically to eliminate the phrase, yes, but.
Oh, that's, yeah.
And I was like, because I know that someone's going to say, oh, you could be this because of X, Y, and Z. And then the first thing you want to say is, yes, but I don't look good in a pixie cut, so I can't be that. Or like, or yes, but I have kind of narrow shoulders, so I can't be that. So it's kind of, you just have to be like, let me see, let me explore, let me look at this as if it wasn't all these baggages that I've carried.
What if you had
life.
fresh eyes? And what if they were kind eyes? And what
Yeah.
if they're loving eyes? That's why the very first game is My 3 Loves.
Yeah.
Because if you can't start with self-love, and you have to work at it, unfortunately, life takes us away from that path. But getting back to it, we build muscles. We build muscles of love. But if you can't start with self-love, you can't get to self-acceptance. And if you can't get to that, you can't put yourself out in the world. Because even if you're talented, it's not you. So, you know.
Exactly. And I mean, I think it's like a self-identity journey. And that's why I was going to go
It totally
back
is that, yes.
to what you said, though. So is it kind of a myth that you shouldn't start this journey before you're 25?
Oh, I never said that to anybody.
I know. So it was more just that you noticed there was a good shift at this age.
Yeah, and that people tended to take it seriously. People always say, oh, you know, you're outdated because you don't do trends. I don't do trends because there's nothing modern about trends, and trends come and go and they come back again.
Yeah.
And even though I was going to try to write a book about trends, by the time I even got the first manuscript written before somebody else to read it, those will be long gone, especially today. Like you go into a big box store, they change their whole stock. They turn it over every 2 weeks. So, you know, and it's always to get you to buy something new.
Wait,
so
I want to ask you a question about that. So, like, obviously, the idea of lines and the idea of this, like, connection points is, like, we're not in a vacuum, though. So there's going to be trends that at some point we feel connected to.
Yeah, well, and you can
Is
either...
that kind of a dance step you can take now that you know your line?
Depends on what it is and why you're attracted to it. And also, you can do anything you want to. I'm not out to arrest anybody if they don't do what I think that they should do.
I'm not saying that.
If you're doing it for the sake of trend, because
No,
which is what a lot of people do, and they insist that they're not. They insist that it looks great on them, but really their idea of what looks great is what they see everybody else in their peer group doing. So it's where your idea comes from. That's why I like to go back to those movies that you can't dress like, but you can see how artistry is used. Okay, so leopard comes in and out. Well, somebody asked me about this before. Leopard today is like a neutral, you know, like Jackie wore leopard and Joan Collins wore leopard. 2 completely different senses of style. style.
course.
But, it's like if there's something that's there that really you want, first of all, play with it. Have fun. That's great. Are you going to integrate it into your wardrobe? You might find a way to do it, and sometimes it's just not. Sometimes it's just a fling, and that's okay.
I usually tell people, wait 6 months, and if you still love it, then figure out why.
Yeah,
because if it's not being surrounded by it,
that's really
sometimes
good.
It's kind of like peer pressure. Is
Yeah,
it peer pressure, or is it an authentic
And
style?
that goes through life. Today, when we reach a certain age, it's just as bad as teenagers. The idea of looking artificially young. There is ageism in our society.
Oh, yeah.
This is just as bad or worse than anything else, because it cuts people off at a certain time. My philosophy is we think of style as evolution. It's always about getting better and more and more and more and more. You're not trying to go back. Like in nature, everything starts very lovely, but it always blossoms into something more beautiful. Like the rose is the best example, because a bud is just lovely, but the beauty of a rose is when it's fully blossomed. Or like a little cub is very cute, but the lioness is the thing. But that's the purpose of that soul's life, whether it's plant, animal, human, we're all connected in nature. And that is the natural So when women today think that their idea is to look artificially young, like they always did, that creates a real problem. That means you're stopping your evolution. The thing I want to reiterate to people about jumping to some result is you miss the magic of the discoveries along the way, the magic that is there. That then it's like, how do you build a house? Step by step by step. You have a concept, yes, of course, but then you have a blueprint, and the blueprint tells you how to make the foundation, and the foundation tells you how you're going to build the house. But you build all the pieces so that they're a whole. You can't have a roof that's designed for one thing, some other style of house, and a basement that would come from some other type of house, because it'll collapse. It doesn't work.
But it's also seeing is believing. So you may try that. You may try the crazy roof and
that's okay.
And you try it and you're like, well, something's wrong. And then you go back and you start to see.
Oh my God! If you could see my closet, if I had a closet of all my mistakes, well, it would fill a stadium. I used to love trend when I was in that area. So I came of age really in the 70s. So Fiorucci was my big deal. I loved Fiorucci, and this is in like the late 70s. Is disco, and that was so much fun. I had these black sort of shiny pants. And they were like, I don't know, rayon or something. And they were not tight, but they were, high-waisted. And I had this sleeveless T-shirt. It was all black, and it had like a profile of Nefertiti and gold glitter on it.
Okay.
I love that so much. But I was an actor, so we also had to present ourselves in a very commercial way, or you would work. So I had these two sort of things going on all along. But I loved that time. But then it certainly became different from when I was in a trend era of my life. And so learning about yourself and learning like how wonderful, what the feeling is when you are really in your element, which is what you are when you're in your style. That's why it's called the power of style. How magnificent it is, the feeling. And also what you're creating as you're walking down the street or in life, and you see the reactions and you just have that experience. It's a whole different thing. The greatest thing about image is when things are focused in harmony with who you are, coming from who you are, it sets all the energy in motion. It's like magic. You're telling a story to people, and people who want to hear your story come right to you. You bring people to you.
And that's the power.
That is the power. Because you just think, when you see somebody really dressed, rocking like great colors, and they're in their style, it makes you feel wonderful. And that, I think that's maybe the greatest gift in life, if you can make people smile.
Of course. So what, I know you work with people one-on-one, you take them and you bring them through this journey. What is the biggest hurdle that you find most people have?
Sometimes it's budget. Sometimes they let the budget rule them instead of, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a budget, but they'll eliminate things.
I think that's interesting, because I think you talk a little bit about that as like kind of deservingness and understanding that like you're worth investing in that image, the time, the money, everything.
Start with your dreams. Let's do that, because we can always take something out. Like, I'm a whiz at dealing with budgets. I'm really good. And I get to the end and I'm ruthless. If we really have a budget, I'll eliminate this. And I know that we can't have this if we're having this. I know you love this, but then you can't have this. And if we don't have this, then, what are you going to wear to work, because you have to do this. And so I get all of that. But I say start with what if you didn't have those limits? I mean, I'm not saying we're going to go shop, in Paris on the Champs-Élysées if, your budget is for Zara. I'm not saying that.
But let's dream that.
Yeah, but let's dream it. Let's start with that because we can bring it down easily. But if I start with like here, then getting somebody to see something beyond that is hard. That's a big one because, oftentimes, I've said this, I think, in the book, so often this happens, we get to the register and somebody illuminates something they really want. And I've tried to explain to them, well, get that instead of this. And they're being what they call practical. Then they go home, and they call us 2 weeks later and they know they just can't, they got to have it. It's gone, it's gone. And I can't push someone forward. I push the envelope as much as I can with people, but that is why it's really important. Before we work with anyone personally, we have them do a dream board and we ask them all these questions about what they would love in their life. What is their dream job? Not just like, where do you work today? I want to know that too. You've got to do that. But I want to know if the sky's the limit. Where is your heart? Because then, we can find things that appeal to that. And that's how I wardrobe your future. Because you can't just think it today. You got to think it tomorrow. So that's a big one. Let's see, what else?
You're like the stand-in believer for them. When they don't believe in themselves, you're like, I'll believe in you for you.
I want to be the very best friend you ever had. I want to be your confidant. I want to be your mentor. Because I don't have any skin in the game other than wanting you to have your dreams. There's no way I would do this if that wasn't what I'm really doing for someone. It wouldn't interest me.
That's evident. That's evident in your writing.
Like I'll give you a secret. Like I hate to shop for myself. I hate it. I would have no clothes if Susan didn't go with me and drag me there. But I love to help a person transform, and I love to use the clothes as a part of that. When they come out,
you're like the artist, right?
That really is me. When someone comes out of the dressing room in the first time, and the first of the things when we've gotten to that point, and always it's a surprise to them because it's something they wouldn't pick, and they look fabulous. And everybody around there that doesn't know their word goes, oh my God, wow, and you watch that happen. That's what I do this for.
But that's the seeing is believing. They have to see themselves in a new light.
And some people still can't. It takes time,
it does. But that's why it's a journey.
It is a journey. And what you have to do is you have to be willing to do it. And also, once you even have the clothes, you have to be willing to wear them. But here's the other thing. It's got to be in your closet. I made this saying up. If it's not in your closet, it can't be in your life. People always say, it's so much work to get dressed this way. If you have the right outfits in your closet, it's not any harder to get dressed in a great outfit as it is in a one that looks like, this is the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So think of it that way and, try to see what you can come up with.
But it's a road trip. We're not rushing it. We're not speeding. Right. We're looking at the sites and we're slowly collecting little pieces that are going to help shape the next step, the next head to toe, the next new piece of
I think the hardest thing is for people to really believe that their dreams matter. And that's very sad. I almost want to cry when I hear that. But that's honestly really the truth because I know life is hard. But especially like when you have kids, you have a mortgage, you have all these things and it's hard. But, when you let that diminish your dreams, that's the saddest thing. One of the things I love to do, and I try to do it, I shop everywhere with people, from highest high-end possible to like the bargain basement. But if we go to a place where I can get them an evening gown to try on, I'll do it at the end. Even if they think, I'm never going to wear that, and they'll say that, I said, just try it on.
I want you to see
first. Well, sometimes Susan always says, let's start with that. And I'm like, I'll say, just come out in it. There's nothing like it. It's like it does take you in another realm. Also, it reminds you that you're more than the mundane. You know, there's more to you than getting up and going to your 9 to 5. There's more to you than that. And the magic that you had as a child, it exists. And, that's the power of style, to bring that magic back into your life. But it's your magic. It's not my magic. I'm not trying to superimpose my vision or my view on anyone. I'm trying to help you see what your potential is.
Yeah.
I see that. When why I say that the way I do, I always have. If you want to do it astrologically, it's because I'm all water. Okay.
Fire. So.
Oh, you are? When's your birthday?
November 24th.
Oh, so you just hit Sagittarius. Susan's November 21st, so she's the end of Scorpio. So I have 5 planets in Cancer.
Okay.
And my moon is in Scorpio, and I have no earth in my chart whatsoever. All right? Which doesn't mean I don't know anything practical. What that means, and they'll really tell you this, is I had to learn practicalities. That's how I'm able to write a book and put these abstract concepts into something that people can actually use, because I've had to to learn to do that. I have fire in my chart, so that saved my life. But anyway, I guess I'm a rebel. Somebody asked me, are you a rebel? Well, I guess so, because I never really would let people tell me what I had to be, because I am going to be what I'm going to be. I grew up in a small town, but I always had a vision that I wanted to I was always creating. It's not even a vision. I just did it. I always wanted to look at not what people presented to me, but what they could present to me. And my ideas were not limited. I was not going to be limited by anybody's ideas.
Do you think that's because you and Susan both have an acting and kind of performer that like it made you very malleable to the idea of potential and possibility and kind of carving your own path? I
think that we have something in us that drove us to seek that. A lot of actors don't have that. A lot of actors don't at all. So it isn't like necessarily that. I think, for me, I was just very fortunate to find a couple of good mentor type people along the way. But the skill I learned, I practice, and that's the same thing with what I do. Every single day, I try to see what can I do to evolve this system that I created? How can I make it better and more approachable and more practical and deal with what's available?
So you have worked so hard and seen so many people and walked to these people through all of their transformations. And obviously you've kind of collected that and created this new paradigm. I want to ask you about something that people get really stuck on is the heights.
Oh, okay.
How did you decide that?
It's not about height, it's about length, all right?
Okay,
so
good.
This is like, so when people say there's only 3 tall types, well, first of all, there's no types, okay? That's not true. There's no types. Image identities are not types. It's a framework to help you along the way, give you focus. If there's 10 soft-dramatics in the room, they're completely different. And their way of expressing it is completely different.
I love
that.
They
have some unity. We all connect with other people in certain ways. We're all alike, but we're not. It's not height. It's because at a certain height, you have to have an automatic length. Okay, if we're talking about your silhouette, we're talking about the idea of, again, is really vertical versus curve. So if you are at a certain height, you have to have vertical as a dominant because nothing else could be dominant because the vertical line is so long. Like let's say you were vertical and balanced. Okay, well if you're like 5'7", you can't be vertical and balanced because to be balanced, you'd have to be so wide that no human being could be that wide because that's what balance is. So the vertical is, again, the eye has to travel.
Just a longer line.
Yeah, and it's going to. So, yeah, it has to be. It doesn't limit you because you can do anything you want with it. Like if you're vertical and curve, you can do the same thing as somebody who's like a double curve in terms of effect. But you do it with your length. You've got to have the length honored.
You're honoring yourself.
You can't stuff like a really tall person into a really little tiny outfit. You cannot do it. First of all, it won't fit. That's number one. And especially in today's fabrics, they're flexible, but they're not going to, you can't stretch something out. You can't stretch a dress out. So it's not about the height, it's about the length. You can have that length and be smaller because the length can still be dominant in a smaller person. But when you're taller, the length has to be dominant. That's why we call it vertical. Not length.
Yes.
But that's what it is. It's all about what your silhouette is going to require. So that's what it is. So it doesn't limit anybody.
Oh, I mean, honestly, when I thought I was 5'6", I was like, this seems so much easier.
It makes it, it does.
I don't know why
but
people
again,
don't like it.
then you're doing it the wrong way because you're using that to determine your ID.
It was before the book. It was before the book.
Well, no, I understand that. And listen, I get it. I'm battling everything in terms of history, and it's a heavy lift, and I don't expect people to get it like that. But I would like people to have an open mind and try it and not just say no. But when people come to the table and say, oh, I can't wear a ruffle, or I could never, yeah, you can. If I find the right thing for you, you can. So if it's in the right silhouette, we can make pretty much anything work.
So 5'6" was kind of just like over time, you just noticed that this was kind of the number that made sense.
Yeah, because as I changed it, the system has evolved.
Yeah.
So as clothes evolved,
you've seen so many
that's
people.
why I came up with this idea to work today. You have to understand your personal line. But the truth of it is, the clothes were so structured, they were going to be what they were going to be. Like we go back to that new look of Dior, which was small on top, artificially cinched waist and huge amount of fabric. Everybody had to wear that. So you will see Lauren Bacall in a dress like that. You'll see Elizabeth Taylor in a dress like that. You'll see Claudette Colbert in a dress like that. It worked better on some than others, but you had all these different what became recommendations to make that closer to you.
Okay.
And that's where essence comes in, because it's not, you can't quantify a person's essence. To me, that's one of the worst things when people say, oh, this is my essence, because you cannot give that a label, because when you do that, you're denying the range of who you are. We're all these
You're boxing
things.
yourself in.
You really are. And smashing boxes is the main thing. So the whole idea of the height has to do with what the silhouette requires in terms of length or curve, or where it fits. So in the old days, the height idea, to throw that in, it's the only way you can explain it.
Yeah.
So I can't really explain length because everybody thinks, well, I look long, or this, that. It's not that. At a certain height, you're going to have that length. But in the old days, it was a little more nebulous, okay? So it wasn't as, now it's pretty clear, like 5'6" really is the point. When you're talking about personal line being there, that it absolutely has to cut over. There's nobody that, and it has nothing to do with how tall people are in your part of the world or how short they are.
I know, the average height.
It has nothing to do with that, because if you're 5'6" or over, you've got to have a silhouette that's going to cover that. It has anything to do with whether somebody else in your neighborhood is tall.
It's the amount of fabric.
Yep, that's right. It's the amount of fabric, and also the placement in the silhouette.
So why do you think, now this is somewhat related, but why do you think people are so into the romantics these days? Let's give some yang love.
Do you think so? I think you may think that because you're a flamboyant natural, right?
Well, I'm on the journey.
Okay, well, let's say that you are that. Okay, so I'm not, so I shouldn't tell you that.
No, I
you
love
be whatever you determine you are.
Hey,
but
I have you here, I'm going to listen.
I think if you ask a romantic that, she'd say, there's no clothes in the store for me. They don't exist. I think that's very relative. Let me tell you, so here's the thing that's hilarious to me. When I started online, it was a slow process, going in online, seeing what people were doing, being pretty horrified. Then how am I going to help them change it? Also, what's going on in the world, what's already changed that they have no idea that it's changed. How am I going to do that? This took about 15 years to do this online. But the first thing I saw was how everybody wanted to be what they called TR. One of the first groups that came in said something about TR, and I thought, you're talking tiaras? What are you talking about? I'm not telling. I never told anybody they need to wear a tiara. No, they said it's a theatrical romantic. We have these abbreviations. That is hilarious, because when I started doing this, if I told somebody they were a theatrical romantic, they would be horrified. Time does all these things to people, and it's like, who knows why people idealize the people that they do. So that always cracks me up. Like how I wrote the first book, I tried so hard to make every image identity equal. I literally would look at the words that I used, and I would try to find a corresponding word for every single category that would make them think a positive thought about themselves.
So like the dream spinners and all this kind of
whatever it is, but connecting. Also in the whole descriptions, all the literal descriptions. But here's the problem. People see it their own way. Like
subjective lens.
It's exactly that. Then they think, he doesn't like any of us. He only likes them. But I said all these fabulous things about the soft natural. I didn't tell anyone these crazy things you see online. You don't see that in the book. But if you have a preconception of what those words mean, those words don't mean that. They mean that to you. Yes. That's one of the big problems of social media is the hive mind mentality. Yeah. Because everything on social media is niche. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but they're all niche. So you go to people that sort of think the way you do. So if you have this prejudice, everybody does, and then they think the whole world is, and then they blame me for writing something terrible. But then if you go to another section, they don't feel that at all. They feel the opposite. You got to understand your prejudice belong to you. Just like your dreams belong to you. It's the other side of the coin. So to me, beauty is individuality. So this is a technique to unleash that. And if you bring prejudice to the table, that is your issue. And I'm sorry that you do. And I try to honor what I can honor. Style evolves from identity. Those are the important things, and you have to start with self-love, self-acceptance, self-celebration, and then sharing your light with the world. That's the whole point.
It's interesting. I feel like people have found so much solace in your system and so much community around it. And I think that this book is kind of like a full meal. And people have to go in thinking like that, you know, and you kind of have to separate out that there's always going to be people who just like love the system so much and are so fascinated that they want to do the collages of all the exemplars, or they want to have the junk food of the like, what is this celebrity's ID? And it's because they just have a lot of respect and it feels like a safe space for them to play. And I think that you've cultivated that.
I think, you know, like when it comes to the celebrity thing, I almost never say anything about celebrities. Sometimes I'll do like in an interview if there's a reason for it. Like I did one a couple of years ago when we were talking about plus size, and there is a dearth of plus size exemplars there, but there always has been. There are more now, certainly, than there were, but there weren't there. But you see, like I think it was a podcast that I did. I talked about Ariana Grande and Sabrina Carpenter. Well, you know, the podcast is like this. It's very far-reaching, but all anybody talks about are those two people online.
It's the junk food. It's the bag of chips. That's why.
You see, here's the problem. As if you could learn anything from either one of those. And I love them both. I do. Ariana Grande is so talented. And she, if she wants to, is going to be a major movie star because on Broadway, because she can do all these things. And Sabrina Carpenter, she's at the beginning, but she's a darling and so amazing. But neither one of them are styled right at all. And neither one of them are good examples for anything. But I was trying to show, I had a reason for doing it. But you see, it becomes focused on stuff that doesn't help people. And it doesn't do you any good. And to see things that you know, their celebrity stylists has put on them for a reason, like they're promoting a movie, or like Zendaya, who is amazing. You know, they style her according to the movies. That doesn't help you. It's not.
She's so cool, though. I met her in person, and like, oh my gosh, I was just like,
yeah, she's a goddess, no question about it. More than that, even. But you know, that's the point of what they're doing. They call it like method dressing because, like, if she's doing Dune, she's doing like this creature. But you're not gonna. That's not gonna help.
It's themed, of course.
Yeah, it's themed, but it's not like it's different from. They're doing it for the movie. They're not really doing it for her. And also the pictures people of celebrities, they don't look like that. They're presented, they're posed. And you Google things, you know, you Google like a celebrity's measurements. They're nothing like that. Now, I live in a neighborhood where there are celebrities on every side of me. Lady Gaga grew up 2 doors away from me. I mean, Lauren Bacall lived down the block from me. I walked past her every single day, walking her Papillon. Madonna has an apartment by me. You know, and I'll see somebody says, Susan Sarandon is like 5'8". I'll say it on Google. She's like 5'4" at the most. You don't know anything about these people. So to use them to teach yourself, it's not accurate. So I don't want to give people tools that take them down rabbit holes. There's enough of them.
I agree with that. And I understand that reasoning completely. Is there a celebrity that you've looked at in, like, let's say the past 10 years and you've just been like, wow, she just gets it?
You.
No.
Gabriella Ruda.
No.
It's hard to say because they all have designer endorsements.
Yes.
And that really makes a big difference. There's some that I love, you know, but...
Okay, then talk about a celebrity you love. You don't even have to talk about their ID. Just say... someone that you just looked at on screen and were like, wow.
You know, she's such a character actress, but she looked pretty good on the red carpet, but is Julia Garner. She's just amazing.
Yes.
What an actress she is. But who I love is Cyndi Lauper.
Oh, okay.
God. I would like, she's it.
That's amazing.
Let me tell you what I think would be good for people. We live in a celebrity-obsessed culture. I would suggest you pull the celebrities, if you're on a line in any kind of a group, pull them out of your main group and make one just for celebrity guessing, and do that just as a thing by itself.
Yeah.
And don't have it in the group where you're trying to really help each other, because it's like amazing how it sucks all the air out of the room. And so you're losing so much that you could get when you do that. So that would be my suggestion. I mean, it's fun. I understand it is, you know, but...
You know what? I think it was interesting when you said Ariana Grande was a theatrical romantic. I think it also made people reflect on their own prejudices a little bit because they were so sure she was this and she wasn't. And so, you know, I understand why you don't want people to fixate on her style. But I think it shows that our preconceptions of these image identities need to be released.
That is actually a big part of why I did it when I did it. That really is, you know, and it is to sort of jostle everybody and to get them to sort of understand.
You guys think you know, but you don't.
You know, I want to get away from this whole idea that there's anybody out there that's more fabulous than you.
Yeah.
There is not. Fabulosity comes from individuality. It is you as a unique being. That's why you're here on this planet. That's why you came here. And we need your story. We all came together when we want your story. But we all have passion. If you get in touch with your passion, which your dreams lead you to that takes you to your purpose, because you don't have a dream that is not connected to your soul. It wouldn't be your dream if it wasn't. It's your authenticity. Your dreams are yours. It doesn't mean that your dream is literally what you want in your life or that it will come true, but it will lead you to something.
And it shows you a side of yourself that you need to uncover and tap into and explore. And maybe it doesn't happen the exact way that you thought. You don't know what you don't know. Maybe it leads to something better.
Yeah.
And
well, my dream of coming to New York led me to this. There was no possible way I could imagine doing what I did.
And the new book and the new
that's
things,
right.
it's all...
But this whole career that I have, this field did not exist. And I uncovered it along the way, following my path, which has gone to some pretty crazy places sometimes, that allowed this to unfold.
And you're just stretching you're expanding people. You're telling them that it's possible that they can go there. They don't have to believe it fully, but just a little nugget of it to
But the great thing about style, and the great thing about what you do and what I do, like you design a beautiful dress for someone. You put her in that dress, even if she fights in it, it changes her. And she walks around in it, she just changed her life. She changed her life. The dress did that. Now, it's got to be the connection, but you as a designer see that. So you're giving that person, you're giving her a taste of her dream when you do that. You give people a taste of that. It's like when you taste something. I say that funny thing about avocados in the book. Like
you hated them, but you loved them.
I don't even know where I had one. But then I had to have it one day, and I eat avocado every single day now. I love it, There's so much out there. The world is just a gold mine, a treasure chest, like Alibaba's cave of riches for you that you just want to connect to, and we all have the ability to do it. We do.
I believe that too. Now, if you can give the audience like one little tip or one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, one piece of advice.
You got to distill it down into one thing.
In terms of what?
Love yourself.
Well, yeah, that's fall in love with yourself. That's really important. If it's about the book, it would be like, come with an open mind and read it slow and follow what's written there, because it really is a journey. Like I tell you in the beginning, I'm your guide, but this is a guide to help you unlock your dreams. I'm not telling you what your dreams are. I'm just trying to give you the places where you can explore them. That's what this book really is for. It's a process. It's a book of process.
Yes.
And the process will lead you to all these places. Everyone wants to know their image identity, and I get it. You need to. And it's a wonderful thing to know. And you're going to find that along the way, but it's one piece of the puzzle. Yeah. The puzzle is to open up your whole being so that you have the ability to put your potential into life and to put it out there. And,
I love that.
Be kind, love each other, be kind, come from
joy and excitement and revel in the person you can become. My advice for people, which I think everyone should get this book if you're interested in the system, I think that this is where you start.
Thank you
because
so much.
it's gonna shock you the process that it really is about. And in a good way. It's a revelation.
Fun too,
Good. I mean, it should be, right? Life should be fun.
Yep.
Not free of hurdles, but ultimately fun and joyous and rewarding. My advice would be, instead of saying yes, but say, tell me more.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
I'm so grateful for you coming on here.
I love that. Tell me more. Oh, I love that.
Well, hey, we don't know what we don't know.
You got it. There you go. That is the hardest thing to get over. That's the hardest thing to get over. That's a lovely thing to say.
Well, thank you so much. This has been
thank you so much.
Highlight of my 2025. I love the book. It is amazing to have you
So
here.
Can I just tell everyone, if you can only see her face, she has this beautiful gown on. It's gorgeous. It's like a popsicle, but also it's high glamour and gorgeous and gorgeous.
Well, I had to show up, fashion royalty and all.
That's too sweet. Thank you so much. I've just loved this, and I think you're a great influence on people. And I thank you for all the years that you've really put out what you've put out.
Thank you. It's been an amazing time.
Thank you. Okay.
Until next time.
Bye.
Woo.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Thank you. Oh, it was so much fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
I just love it.
I adored your book. I adored hearing you speak about it. It's obvious you're so passionate, and
thank you.
There's just real dedication there.
Thank you so much.